Morning everyone, and welcome to our distance formula day of our MCA review. If I could draw your attention to your formula sheet, here we have distance formula. Now the distance formula is d equals the square root of x2 minus x1 squared plus y2 minus y1 squared. So we just by looking at that, I can tell that I'm going to need 2 points to find out the distance, which is great because the distance is the distance between those 2 points. So let's get started with one of these. Find the distance between the 2 points. So we have -6 and 4 and 3, -1. So -6 is going to be our x, 4 is going to be our y, 3 is going to be our x, and -1 is going to be our y. Now we just need to say which one is 2 and which one is 1. Looks like I'm starting at -6, 4, so I'm going to say those are x1 and y1. 3, -1 is where I end, so that's going to be x2 and y2. So if we put this into our distance formula, d is going to equal the square root of x2, which is 3, minus our x1, which is a -6, squared, plus our y2, which is -1, minus our y1, which is a +4 squared. So now we got to solve this. So d equals the square root. 3 minus a -6 is going to change to a plus, so it becomes 9 squared, plus -1 minus 4, well, that's going to be a -5 squared, then we got to continue to solve. 9 squared is 81, plus -5 squared is 25. Then we got to add what's inside, 81 plus 25. If I do that, I get 106. Then I'm going to use my calculator to figure this out. The square root of 106 is 10.3. So the distance between -6, 4 and 3, -1 is 10.3. If we try this next one, looks like we got x1 as -1, y1 as 3, x2 as 5, and y2 as 2. So if we put this in our distance formula then, x2 is 5 minus our x1, which we said was -1, squared, plus y2 is 2 minus 3 squared. So d is going to equal the square root of 6 squared plus a -1 squared. D equals the square root of 36 plus 1. So d is going to equal the square root of 37. So our distance, then, I'm going to put this into my calculator, is going to be 6.08. Alright, now it's just giving us 2 points, so we don't actually have a graph this time, but we still have our x1 and our y1, our x2 and our y2. So we are going to have the square root of 3 minus 3 squared plus 6 minus 0 squared. So we're going to get the square root of 0 squared plus 6 squared. Square root of 0 plus 36. If we square root that, square root of 36 is going to give us 6. So the distance between those 2 points is 6. Alright, so the distance between 2 and 2 and 2 and negative 1. Well, we have our x1, our y1, x2, and y2. x2 comes first, so 2 minus our x1, which is 2, plus y2, which is negative 1 minus 2. So what we're going to have then is 0 squared plus negative 1 minus 2, that's negative 3 squared. So if we simplify that, 0 plus 9 is going to give us the square root of 9, which is 3. Now right away I could look at these 4 answers and I could cross off A right away, because our distance, the distance between 2 points, is never going to be negative. So we're never going to have a negative distance because that's impossible. So now that we solved it, we know that our answer is B. But if you ever see a negative distance, you can immediately cancel that out, which will give you a better shot to get the answer right. Last thing we're going to talk about is slope versus distance. So we're going to look at the difference between a distance and a slope. So it's the same thing. We're still going to have x1 and y1, and we're going to have x2 and y2. For distance, we have the square root of x2, 8 minus a negative 2 squared, plus negative 7 minus a negative 3 squared. So that's going to be 10 squared plus a negative 4 squared. So 100 plus 16. So the square root of 116. If I put that in my calculator, I get 10.77. That is my distance between those 2 points. Now the slope is a little bit different. This time we start with y. So y2 minus y1, so it's going to be negative 7 minus a negative 3. Then we have x2 minus x1 on the bottom, which is going to give us 8 minus a negative 2. So they're the same problems, just in a different order. Negative 7 plus 3 is going to give us negative 4. 8 plus 2 is going to give us 10. So negative 4 over 10, well, that's going to simplify to negative 2 over 5, which is, in a decimal, negative 0.4. So as you can see, the difference between slope and distance, there could be a huge difference because the distance is from one point to the other, just straight on the line. The slope is going up or down and then over. So that's how fast it's changing up along the line. The other thing is that slope can be negative. Distance can never be negative because you can never have a negative distance. But yeah, so those are some things you're going to have to remember when you are solving for slope or distance. Remember which ones come first. It's a good thing that on your MCA you will have this formula sheet, so you never have to forget. You have the distance here, and you have the slope of a line